Hey, and welcome to the channel. So this is the first official video from Tralion, also myself, Josh Post. So we are beginning to roll out content. Been looking forward to this for a long time. Have been wanting to get into the content creation game, but just never really knew what to do it about because I've done so many different things over the last few years. And I want to use this channel basically as a way to show what's happening in real time within marketing. These are not going to be like heavily produced videos. It's just going to be me literally speaking at a camera. I'll cut out some of the ums and ahs to make it, tolerable. But basically, this is going to be what I'm seeing happening across the market right now, with a focus on traffic and conversions effectively. Meta ads is the main focus. At least that's what we run most of the time. Some YouTube, some Google, some TikTok, some Pinterest, but Meta is still king. And in this video specifically, because it's very relevant, I'm going to talk about why performance on Meta has been so up and down, like what's actually happening with it. More importantly, what's working. How do you mitigate that? How do you get consistent, great results so your business continues to grow and you're not feeling like 1 month we're up, 1 month we're down? I want to help you put more money in your pocket. And the entire goal of me making this channel is that eventually you're going to want to work with me and my agency at some point in the future. Or maybe it's just going to be entertainment. Maybe you'll just listen to this, when you're driving in the car or whatever. But either way, we're going to make sure it's really valuable. So I'm going to get right into it. So let's talk about meta ads and what people are seeing first and foremost. So meta ads are tricky. In the past, I would say from 2015 to 2021, meta ads were the golden goose. That's where you wanted to spend your money. You'd be stupid to spend money other places at that moment in time. And really around that 2020 to the 2020 to 22 period, that's when things were incredible, right? So I built and sold a brand at that moment in time, actually in swimwear, funny enough. In the e-commerce space, like everybody was making a shitload of money at that moment in time. And a couple reasons for it. I mean, one, tracking within Meta had gotten to a really good point to where basically we had so much pixel data and so much data for the last 10 years or decade or however long Facebook had been around, that really indicated strongly on if somebody was going to buy something or not. So that's why you could throw up a static creative at that moment in time, literally showing a picture of a product, and it would convert, right? Because it'll literally find somebody who's looking for that specific thing at that moment in time. Like that's how granular the data was. Okay. Something called iOS 14 happened in 2021. Now, when iOS 14 happened, all of the data that went back, all the data that used to get passed back, no longer did. So iOS 14 equals bad. So now we don't have these hyper optimized and hyper targeted individuals who we know are looking for that specific product at that moment in time anymore. So things changed really, really quickly. And that was actually, funny enough, around the time when people first started talking about like copywriting and direct response. Now, if you don't live under a rock, then you would know that direct response fundamentals have been around for years. In fact, like a long time ago when I was beginning to cut my teeth with marketing and sales and all of that stuff, that's all I studied was Eugene Schwartz and Claude Hopkins and Gary Halbert, even Ben Settle, even Alex Becker, who obviously I'm taking some inspiration from as far as the whiteboard video goes, all very much rely on direct response fundamentals. So what does that mean? Well, if before this is your ad, it could find out of a bunch, these are all people, out of a bunch of people, it can find that perfect person just because of what that person was doing before, okay? So there was this direct link because of the pixel. Now, what's happened is basically the pixel doesn't have data anymore. They're still pixel, but they track different things. They track like on-platform engagement behaviors, and they're really looking at how somebody's using Meta or Instagram specifically, as opposed to what they were doing off-site, because a lot of that data is now gone. This was a big thing with Apple because most buyers are, statistically own iPhones, but I'm sure something similar has happened with Androids as well. But honestly, when this happened, I would rather not be in the minutia of what's happening at a platform level every day. I want to rely on direct response fundamentals and what actually makes money. But bottom line is that data has gotten worse and worse over time. What does that mean? So now it means that your ad, rather than Meta finding the perfect person for your ad, Meta shows your ad to a bunch of different groups of people. So here's a group of people, here's a group of people, here's a group of people, here's a group of people. And they're going to be looking at what that user is doing with your ad on the platform. And that's going to be how they determine what CPM costs. And then eventually they can still get back in like purchase data through CAPI and through a few other mechanisms. But they're guessing, right? So it's much more of a guess thing. That's why, especially when you're first launching an ad, some days you're going to see a ton of sales, you're going to see great performance, and the next day it'll be crickets. You just won't see anything. So that's what's happening. And it's simply because of data and how data is being passed back to Facebook as a platform. So what does that mean? Well, that means that creative is more important than ever. But I want to touch on that because I think that's been really, really taken out of context to where now people think, okay, I want to upload 100 new creatives a week. It's like, yeah, you can, but it's a waste of time. And I would rather just not guess. I'd rather just know who the buyer was, treat Meta the way it's supposed to, which is really like just a big group of people with some general targeting on where it's going to go, as opposed to being this hyper-focused optimization funnel that it was before. And that's what I've done. And I've done it with great success across a bunch of different clients, because if you don't do this in this point in time, you're stupid. Like, you need to be writing your ad to be and this sounds like common sense, but you'd be shocked. You need to write your ad, one, to meet your ICP and their specific pain points, obviously, but also to have enough reach to where you're not going to, Meta's not going to be limited by the amount of people it can show. What does that mean? Well, that means that we need a better offer sometimes, or it can easily just be we need better unit economics on the back end. So this is why I wanted to talk about what's working right now. Because if you go to Reddit, you're going to see everybody complaining about Meta performance and ads and, oh, it's worked for 10 years and now it suddenly doesn't. I get it. So what does that mean? That means that we need one very strong offer. Okay? This is king. And people talk about an offer. What is an offer? Well, an offer is just a reason to get somebody to act now. Okay? For example, throwing in things like, or you don't pay, or buy one, get one free. The most popular one, especially in like the agency sector, is, guaranteed ROI or you don't pay. We use it too, right? That's a great way to get mass attention at scale, because at the same time, while data has gotten worse, users have also gotten way more skeptical. Everybody has been burned by a Facebook ad or a dropshipping ad or something at this point, or even like a coaching funnel. Like if you're a coach and you're trying to run cold traffic, just know that when people see your ad, they're 99.99% of the population immediately thinks you're full of shit, right? So it's really important to get out ahead of that and make it very clear that you are not full of shit, right? So offer and trust are key. Messaging. So how that is being displayed, okay? And this is another thing that people get wrong. People will think that it's only about the format. Now, when I talk about format, I actually agree, like format definitely matters, and there's just different formats that work for different brands. So some of the popular ones now are like street polling. There are the fake podcast interviews. There's just doing podcasts just to get clips, like going on podcasts and making your sole goal to get clips, giving them the questions to ask. There's UGC, which has been around for ages. You can obviously run statics, but all those formats, they don't really matter. All that matters is getting somebody to view, because formats are in, they're in one day, out the other. And we do all of those for our clients. I always, whenever I'm rolling out a new client, I always want to test and see how they do. But in general, you figure out what's going to be a good fit for your brand, but just know that's going to change in 6 months. Now, your message is very, very different. So format, that changes over time, okay? Format changes over time. Your message needs to be written to your different avatars. Now, if you're a business, if you're an e-commerce brand, if you're an agency, if you're a coach, if you're a consultant, or you have any kind of online service, I mean, basically, if you sell something expensive online, we work with you. It is shocking how many people, how many business owners, especially small business owners, do not understand who their customer is, so they have no idea how to write to them. So instead, they just say, hey, here's our thing. It's really cool. So to give you a perfect example of why that's broken, here's our thing. Here's why it's really cool. That's great if you're specifically looking for that thing at that moment in time. But humans do not run towards pleasure. They run away from pain. So in reality, we need to figure out what problem we're actually solving within the market. Okay? What does that mean? Well, what that means is we need to identify how our customers are actually speaking about these problems. This is something we do for all of our clients, and there's a couple ways you can go about this. One is you can listen to sales calls. You can look at any customer interactions you have. You can look at reviews. You can look at competitor reviews. You can look at Reddit. You can look at forums. You can basically do data mining across the internet to see what is the current sophistication of the market. Now, I'm not going to go, this video is too short. I'm not going to go into what the different levels of buying sophistication are, but bottom line is there is a consensus in terms of how most of your buyers are speaking about what you sell and how they're thinking about what you sell and what their pain points actually are. And that usually comes down into about 1 to 3 different avatars for any individual company. Now, the game becomes not to tell them how cool your thing is, because then they need to bridge the gap for why they'd be interested. The game becomes, how do we speak directly to their problems and to their pain points, and then position ours as a solution. Simple in practice, right? Or simple in theory, more difficult in practice. But that is what's missing. And so this is all on the meta side of things, right? This is a meta-focused video, but I'm also going to share how we think about marketing as a whole, okay? Because the one thing that you cannot avoid, like you cannot avoid in business, is that the cost to acquire a customer will only ever go up. It's not going to go down. And I don't mean when you're able to squeeze out additional performance through having good ads versus bad ads, which we do all the time for our clients. What I mean is the price of traffic is always going to go up, right? 10 years ago, if you're running on Meta, you could get legitimately an 8 to 10x ROAS relatively easily on relatively little spend, and that would scale with more spend. That's how good it was. Now, it's still the best attention platform, but more and more companies have caught on. It's gotten more expensive. It is just a big bidding war for who's willing to pay the most for traffic anyway. Who can pay the most for traffic? Large companies or companies with a phenomenal back end. So here's the other piece that you need nowadays in order to make Meta ads work. Obviously, we want to get you profitable in the front end so your cash cycle is good. But very important to have a back end in place, something recurring, additional products and services, upsells, account managers, building a real business that does not rely on acquiring new front-end customers all the time. It's why a lot of like coaching businesses, or especially bad coaching businesses, go out of business, because eventually, depending on their offer, they've saturated the market. Everybody's seen the claim 1,000 times before. They have to keep getting bigger and bigger claims over and over and over again to try to attract more people into the market. You end up with worse customers, people who are late adopters, and it just doesn't, it's not pretty, okay? You end up kind of in business hell, and that's also when you see those guys, again, not relevant for most businesses, but in like the coaching space or the biz op space specifically. That's why you see some of those get FTC claims, because they scale too big, and the only way to do that was through making more and more aggressive claims. Okay, we don't need to do that. You do not need to put your business at jeopardy or at risk. So what do we know? Okay, so we know Meta is not as good as it once was. It's more akin to TV advertising than it was to what we thought of as Meta advertising a long time ago, which is okay. You just have to adapt. We need to have good messaging that speaks to actual pain points and problems. We need to have strong formats and creative strategies for doing so. And we need a system to test. And we need to be data reliant, not based on guessing. Okay, we know all of those things. Now let's talk about unit economics a little bit more. We obviously want to be profitable on the front end, but there should, and honestly needs to be a way to continue to get money out of customers long term. Without having that, you're always going to be fighting an uphill battle, and you are literally at the mercy of whatever acquisition channel you're currently using at that moment in time, okay? Creative back-end strategies, having something recurring, having upsells, having services, having renewals, all great ways to go about the process. Unless you're in a local business where you know homeowners are turning over. I work with a wedding venue, and for her, it doesn't, unless somebody gets divorced, it doesn't really matter. They're not going to book at that same event space twice. But the good news is there's several 100,000 people a year who are getting married just within that very small geographic location. It's fine. There's never going to be a demand cap. That's an example where you don't need to have something recurring. Or if you're in home services, you should have more services you can offer, but you do know that there's going to be things that break around their home every single day. So we've talked about Meta not being what it was. We've talked about the importance of having good messaging. We've talked about the importance of having good unit economics. What else is missing? Well, in order for Meta to convert, right, if you think about it, we're optimizing for different groups of people. Now, if we're optimizing for different groups of people, are there going to be similarities in what they want? Yes. Are there going to be differences in what they want? Yes. So why would we send all of them? We're not going to show them the same ad. So why would we show them the same landing page? Instead, what we're doing is we're sending these groups of people through different ads that call out their pain points to different landing pages with different messaging based on who that person is, okay? Then they get into the sales process. They book a call, or they opt in, or they watch a training, or whatever it may be, and they're going to begin to get nurtured. And we want to nurture them based on their pain points again, right? The perfect funnel basically means that you have leads that are ready to close by the time they get to the sales call. Or if they attend a webinar, they're attending the webinar knowing, hey, I'm probably going to buy something tonight, right? Or if they're watching a VSL, I'm going to engage in this service, or I'm going to call the team, right? I'm going to take action, and I want to take action, right? And this is something that a lot of agencies unfortunately don't get. They look into volume, and then they put all of the onus on qualification onto the individual sales team, as opposed to the marketing doing what it's supposed to do, okay? What is marketing supposed to do? Deliver qualified leads who have intent to purchase. If you're hearing, I need to think about it all the time, or if you're hearing, oh, I'll get to it next week, you're just missing buying intent, right? That person could be interested in your service, but maybe not right now. We need somebody who is interested right now in this service from you. Now, will every lead be that way? Absolutely not. But can a very high percentage of them be? Absolutely, if you have the right acquisition system in place. Okay? So we have this infrastructure for these different avatars. And then the entire game is not about guessing at more creative. It's just about iterating on these individual avatars and figuring out what are their objections, what are their concerns, what's missing in the buying process, and then adding it back in. It's that simple. It's not easy, but it is very, very simple if you're tracking things effectively, okay? So that's what's happening in the landscape right now. Consumer trust has never been lower. Consumer spending is still high, but you need to focus on higher income people. Being tailored for that individual is very, very important. And direct response marketing fundamentals are the same, right? Getting somebody to take action right now. So that's effectively what our agency does for businesses, okay? So why should you listen to me? So I've generated in excess of $30 million across a bunch of different teams, across a bunch of different industries for clients, and that number's going up quite a bit. I don't know what the exact number is. I know it's more than 30 million, so I just use 30 million. All of that was generated typically in small businesses. So these are not major companies that I'm stepping into and saying, oh yeah, I was able to generate this. No, most of these businesses were under $300,000 per month revenue when I started with them. So what I do works. Does it work for everyone? No, I mean, there are businesses that you just can't help. But what our agency does is takes a comprehensive approach to marketing and to sales, and literally our entire job and goal is to make you more money, okay? I mentioned we have an ROI offer. We do. If you're interested in learning more, we literally guarantee you're going to make more money by working with our agency, or you don't pay. If you are interested in working with us, I'll have a link in the description here where you can watch a quick VSL explaining more about what we do, the guarantee, etc. But for this, just remember, the one takeaway from this video is go back to fundamentals, figure out who your customer is, look into your data, figure out why people are buying versus why they are not buying, where is the inefficiency? And you can break that out across just a few different areas, either top of funnel, where your ads and content sit, middle of funnel, where your asset, webinar, VSL, landing page, sales page, whatever sits, and where the sale actually happens, which can either be live on a call or through something like a webinar or something along those lines. So that's it for this video. I hope this is helpful. Be much more to come.